What if the coldest CEO you've ever heard of has been hiding a love story for 8 long years, and the woman he loves has been standing right in front of him the whole time? Could this be the secret that will finally melt his icy reputation? Like this story, comment your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe for more unexpected twists, because what you are about to read may change everything you think you know about love, ambition, and destiny. Is it really possible that a man known as the most untouchable CEO in the city has loved only one girl since his youth, silently, painfully, hilariously, and stubbornly for 8 whole years? The city woke up every morning believing the same rumor. Xiao, CEO of Zhan Tech Group, was cold, distant, emotionally unavailable and married to his work. People whispered that he had no heart, only spreadsheets and contracts. Employees trembled when his footsteps echoed through the marble halls. Investors praised his brilliance but feared his gaze. Women admired him from afar but no one dared to get close. No one knew that behind the glass walls of his office, behind the perfectly tailored suits and restrained expressions, there was a man who still remembered the smell of rain on a summer afternoon and the laughter of a girl who once called him by his first name without fear. That girl was Xiao Lusy. 8 years ago, before the CEO title, before the luxury cars and headlines, Xiao was just a poor but brilliant university student with too many dreams and not enough money. Xiao Lusy was sunshine wrapped in chaos, a journalism major who talked too much, laughed too loudly, and cried openly during movies. They met in the most ridiculous way imaginable, colliding at the campus cafeteria when Xiao spilled hot soup all over her notebook. He screamed. He froze. Then he bowed so deeply people thought he was apologizing to the floor. She stared at him, then burst out laughing, soup dripping from her notes, and said it was the best opening scene for a romantic comedy she had ever experienced. From that moment on, she invaded his life with unstoppable energy. She dragged him to cheap street food stalls, mocked his overly serious face and called him old man, even though they were the same age. He pretended to be annoyed, but secretly memorized the way she smiled when she won arguments and the way her eyes softened when she talked about her dreams. He fell in love quietly, deeply, and hopelessly. But life as always had other plans. When Xiao graduated, his family business collapsed overnight due to betrayal from trusted partners. His father fell ill, debts piled up, and the future he had imagined shattered like glass. He disappeared from Xiao Lucy's life without explanation, believing that love was a luxury he could no longer afford. He told himself that one day when he was strong enough, when he could protect her from hardship, he would return. He didn't know that silence could hurt more than rejection. Xiao Lusy waited. She called. She searched. She cried. Then she moved on, or at least she told herself she did. She graduated, became a journalist, and built a reputation for being fearless, emotional, and sometimes hilariously reckless. She still hated cold soup. She still laughed too loudly. And somewhere deep in her heart, there was a scar shaped exactly like Xiao. 8 years later, fate decided it was time to play a cruel joke. Xiao Lusy was assigned to interview the most powerful CEO in the city, Xiao of Zhan Tech Group. When she saw the name, she thought it was a coincidence. When she walked into the office and saw his face, her world tilted. He was taller, sharper, more controlled, but those eyes were the same. For a split second, his perfectly composed mask cracked. He hadn't expected her to walk back into his life like this, holding a recorder and a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. The interview was a disaster and a masterpiece at the same time. She asked sharp questions. He answered coldly. She challenged his ethics. He countered with data. Sparks flew, tension thickened, and the staff watching outside the glass walls felt like they were witnessing a live drama. At one point, Xiao Lusy sarcastically asked if he ever regretted abandoning people for success. The room fell silent. Xiao looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes for just a heartbeat, and replied that regret was a luxury for the weak. She laughed bitterly and ended the interview early. From that day on, their lives tangled again whether they liked it or not. Xiao Lucy's articles kept colliding with Zhan Tech's interests. Xiao found excuses to call her, to argue, to criticize, to protect her when her investigations put her in danger. Their conversations were full of sharp words, misunderstandings, and absurdly funny moments, like when Xiao, the feared CEO, slipped on spilled coffee while trying to appear intimidating in front of her, or when Xiao Lusy accidentally sent him a voice message meant for her best friend, calling him a handsome ice cube with emotional constipation. He listened to that message more times than he would ever admit. Slowly the truth began to surface. Zhao Lucy discovered that Xiao Zhan had been anonymously funding scholarships, supporting investigative journalism, and protecting her career from behind the scenes. She suspected. She confronted him. He denied everything with the same cold face, but his actions betrayed him again and again. The city still believed the CEO was heartless. They didn't see him waiting in his car outside her apartment during storms, just to make sure her lights were on. They didn't see him keeping every article she wrote folded neatly in his drawer. They didn't know that for 8 years he had loved only one girl in silence, in guilt, and in hope. The breaking point came when Zhao Lucy was injured while uncovering a corporate scandal that indirectly involved Zhan Tech. Xiao Zhan rushed to the hospital, suit wrinkled, composure gone. When she woke up and saw him by her bed, eyes red, hands shaking, the wall between them finally shattered. He confessed everything. He spoke of fear, poverty, pride, and love. He admitted that he had chosen ambition over honesty, believing it was for her sake. He apologized not as a CEO, but as a man who had loved her for 8 years without courage. Zhao Lucy cried, laughed, and scolded him all at once, calling him an idiot, a coward, and the most stubborn man she had ever loved. Their reunion wasn't smooth. It was messy, emotional, filled with arguments, misunderstandings, and ridiculously sweet moments. Xiao Zhan learned how to smile in public. Zhao Lucy learned that strength didn't always mean independence. Together they learned that love didn't need perfection, only honesty. When the news finally broke that the cold CEO was dating a journalist known for her chaotic honesty, the city exploded. Headlines screamed. Fans speculated. Employees gossiped. Xiao Zhan simply held Zhao Lucy's hand at a press conference and said that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. The girl he had loved for 8 years smiled at him and replied that it took him long enough. So let me ask you this. Was the CEO ever truly cold, or was he just protecting a heart that loved too deeply? If you believe love can survive silence, time, and pride, share your thoughts, leave a comment like this story, and subscribe for more emotional surprises, because sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones hidden in plain sight. Did you think the story ended when they finally held hands in front of the world? Or was that only the beginning of a far more dangerous chapter where love would be tested by reality, sacrifice, and one final choice that could change everything? The moment Xiao Zhan publicly acknowledged Zhao Lucy, the city's illusion of the untouchable CEO shattered completely. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and social media exploded with disbelief. Some called it a fairy tale. Others mocked it as a publicity stunt. Zhao Lucy, standing beside him, felt the weight of every stare, but for the first time in her life she did not feel alone. Xiao Zhan's hand was warm, steady, and unapologetically firm around hers, as if silently telling the world that he would no longer hide. Yet love, once exposed to the light, also attracts shadows. Within weeks, Zhan Tech faced its biggest crisis. A board member leaked internal conflicts, twisting Zhao Lucy's investigative background into a weapon. Rumors spread that she was manipulating the CEO, that her articles were tools for personal revenge, that their relationship was a calculated move. Investors panicked. The board demanded answers. Xiao Zhan was given an ultimatum: step down or cut ties. For the first time since they reunited, silence returned between them, heavy and painful. Zhao Lucy read the news headlines late at night, her fingers trembling, realizing that the world she had chosen to enter was far more ruthless than she imagined. She remembered the boy who once disappeared to protect her, and fear crept into her heart. Was history about to repeat itself? She made a decision before he could. One morning, Xiao Zhan arrived at his office to find Zhao Lucy waiting for him, calm, composed, and heartbreakingly gentle. She told him she would leave the city, resign from her position, and publish nothing more about Zhan Tech. She said love should not cost someone their entire life's work. She smiled as she spoke, but her eyes betrayed her. Xiao Zhan finally understood the pain he had caused 8 years ago. He refused. In the most shocking move of his career, Xiao Zhan called an emergency press conference. Standing alone on the stage without his usual scripts or advisors, he confessed everything. He admitted his past mistakes, exposed the corruption within his own board, and took full responsibility as CEO. He declared that Zhao Lucy had never influenced his business decisions, except to remind him what integrity looked like. He announced a temporary resignation to restructure the company from the ground up. The room fell into stunned silence. That day Xiao lost his title, his power, and his shield. But for the first time he stood as himself. Lusy watched the broadcast from her apartment, tears streaming down her face, realizing that the man who once chose silence had finally chosen truth. She ran to him without caring about cameras or consequences, colliding into his arms in the middle of the crowd. The world captured that moment not as a scandal but as a promise. Months passed. Zhao survived, transformed, rebuilt on transparency and trust. Xiao returned not as a cold legend, but as a leader respected for courage rather than fear. Lusy published a final article, not an exposé, but a confession of love, ambition, and forgiveness. It became the most read piece of her career. On a quiet evening, far from cameras and rumors, Xiao took Lusy back to the place where everything began. A small, humble cafeteria near their old university. He ordered soup. She laughed and reminded him of the spill that started it all. This time he deliberately tipped the bowl just enough to splash the table, then knelt, pulling out a ring with shaking hands. He told her that he had loved her for 8 years in silence, but he wanted to love her for the rest of his life out loud. She said yes before he could finish. Years later, people would still talk about the cold CEO who turned warm for one girl, about the journalist who softened a man without breaking him, and about a love that survived pride, time, and fear. But for Xiao and Lusy, the world finally became quiet enough to hear what mattered most. Sometimes the greatest ending is not success, fame, or revenge, but the courage to love without hiding, and the certainty that after 8 years of waiting, the right person will still choose you. And if you believe that true love is not about perfect timing, but about never giving up on the same heart, then this story was always meant to end exactly this way.